What if the motorcycle you trusted most suddenly became a liability? For Street Glide owners, that nightmare is now reality. Recalls, shaken confidence, and boardroom drama are only the beginning of Harley's crisis. Watch until the end, because what's revealed could affect every rider more than they realize. Street Glide Recall Shock. Harley's most iconic touring machine, the Street Glide, wasn't supposed to end up here. Yet owners across the country woke up to urgent recall notices, warning that a hidden mechanical defect could put riders at risk. For a model that symbolizes freedom and strength, this was nothing short of betrayal. The issue wasn't cosmetic. Engineers flagged a potential failure in the steering assembly that, under stress, could cause sudden instability at highway speeds. Riders who had trusted the Glide for cross-country trips now faced the terrifying thought of their machine failing them on the open road. The kind of failure no amount of chrome could hide. One longtime rider recalled the moment he opened his recall notice. "I just stared at the letter in my hand. I'd trusted this bike for cross-country trips with my family, and now I couldn't shake the thought of it failing on me at 70 miles an hour. It felt like betrayal." For many, this wasn't just a technical bulletin. It was a gut punch. "I bought a Harley to feel safe and unstoppable," one rider wrote online. "Now I feel like I'm riding a time bomb." Forums lit up. Group chats buzzed. The recall cracked the very foundation of Harley's promise, that these bikes were built to last, built to protect, and built to carry you wherever you dared to go. And just when riders thought they had seen the worst of it, the recall wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Riders blindsided. If the first recall was a shock, the second felt like a gut punch. Without warning, Harley disclosed a new defect affecting more than 41,600 units of its 2024 Street Glide, CVO Street Glide, Road Glide, and CVO Road Glide ST motorcycles. This time, the problem wasn't structural. It was electrical. A wiring harness had been routed dangerously close to the crankcase. Under constant vibration and rising heat, the harness could rub through its protective coating, leaving bare wire exposed. The risk? A sudden electrical short that could kill lights, instruments, and the engine itself instantly. No official crashes had been tied to the defect, but the danger was enough to chill even veteran riders. Imagine leaning into a blind curve or overtaking at highway speed only for your bike to fall silent beneath you. Power gone, vision gone, control gone. For many, it was unthinkable. Dealerships promised swift repairs, but their service bays were already clogged with recall work. Owners who had just spent top dollar on Harley's newest touring platforms now faced weeks, even months, of waiting. And as the dust settled, a bigger question began to take shape. Were these failures isolated, or signs of something far worse inside the company? If you're feeling the weight of what we've covered so far, hit that like button. It tells me you want more stories like this. And drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice here isn't just feedback, it's part of the conversation they don't want us to have. 3 recalls in months. When news outlets placed Harley's recent recalls side by side, the bigger picture started to sharpen. In just a matter of months, the company had issued not 1, not 2, but 3 separate recalls, each hitting a different flagship model. The third, quieter but no less telling, targeted the 2023 CVO Street Glide. At speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour, riders reported handling instability traced to front-end mass calibration. Harley's response was a mix of software recalibration through the engine control module and hardware tweaks designed to restore balance. Individually, a recall like this might be dismissed as an unlucky flaw. But taken together, with one affecting suspension stability, another tied to electrical integrity, and now a third involving high-speed handling, they painted a troubling picture. What had once been Harley's pride, its rigorous testing and bulletproof reputation, suddenly looked compromised. Motorcycle publications began running editorials questioning whether the company was rushing designs to market without proper endurance validation. Loyalists called it unsettling. Potential buyers saw flashing warning lights, and executives in Milwaukee, they knew this kind of momentum wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. And as investors began to connect the dots, the real storm inside Harley's leadership was about to erupt. Riders are scoring huge bike discounts, but the real win is in the gear. We've prepared the best deals on must-have accessories. Check the description below. CEO retirement amid stock crash. The announcement came not from the service department, but from the very top. Jochen Zeitz, Harley-Davidson's high-profile chief executive officer, revealed he would step down in 2025. The timing raised eyebrows. Under his watch, the company had navigated through a pandemic, supply chain upheavals, and a shifting marketplace, but now it was facing a different kind of crisis, one rooted in consumer trust and product reliability. The recalls, coupled with sluggish sales in key segments, had rattled investor confidence. Over the past year, Harley's stock had fallen by 31%, erasing billions in market value. For shareholders, the recalls were not just a public relations problem, they were a financial liability. Repair campaigns cost money, warranty claims ate into margins, and reputational damage translated directly into fewer showroom sales. Analysts speculated whether Zeitz's departure was his own decision or a move engineered by the board to signal a fresh start. Either way, the leadership shakeup added another layer of instability at a moment when stability was desperately needed. With the CEO's exit on the horizon and the recall still unfolding, Harley-Davidson was now a company in the middle of both a mechanical and managerial storm. And for the riders who live and breathe the brand, the question loomed. If the foundation is cracking at the top, what will happen on the open road? Riders wake to recall text. For thousands of Harley-Davidson owners, the first sign of trouble came not from a mechanic, but from a sudden ping on their phone. A recall notification, clinical, impersonal, flashed across the screen, replacing the anticipation of a weekend ride with the sinking realization that their motorcycle might not be safe to operate. For Street Glide riders in particular, the emotional punch was sharp. These were not new owners still learning the ropes. Many had poured decades of loyalty, countless miles, and thousands of dollars into the brand. And now a simple message was telling them to park their pride and joy until further notice. The language was factual, almost cold, outlining the risk of electrical shorts or sudden loss of power. But between the lines, riders heard something else. Uncertainty. Was it really safe to ride until the repair? Would parts be available quickly? And most of all, why had this flaw made it past Harley's legendary quality controls in the first place? Riders swapped stories in group chats, some pulling their bikes off the road immediately, others gambling on just one more ride before booking service. But as owners began calling dealerships to schedule repairs, they found a new problem waiting for them. One Harley hadn't mentioned in the text at all. Service bays jammed. Dealership service departments across North America were already operating at capacity before the recalls. Seasonal tune-ups, accessory installs, and standard maintenance kept bays busy year-round. When tens of thousands of recall appointments hit at once, the system strained to breaking. Riders reported wait times stretching into weeks, sometimes months, as dealers juggled warranty repairs with routine customer work. For those relying on their Street Glide as primary transportation or who had planned long-distance trips, the delays were more than an inconvenience. They were a disruption to their way of life. Parts availability compounded the problem. In some regions, the necessary wiring harness replacements or reinforcement brackets were in short supply. Service managers scrambled to track shipments and prioritize the most urgent cases. Some dealerships offered loaner bikes, but supply was limited, and many riders simply went without. One owner said his Street Glide sat at the dealership for over a month, waiting on a single part. I had planned a road trip I'd been dreaming about for years. Instead, I was stuck at home watching summer slip away while my bike gathered dust. And while riders waited, their machines sitting idle in garages or dealership lots, another issue began to emerge, one that would hit owners directly in the wallet, whether they ever experienced the defect or not. Street Glide resale value crash. The Street Glide has long been one of Harley-Davidson's most desirable touring models, holding its value for years thanks to strong demand and a fiercely loyal customer base. But resale value relies heavily on reputation, and when that reputation takes a hit, the market reacts quickly. Within weeks of the recall announcements, used street glides, especially those from the affected model years, began showing sharp drops in trade-in offers. Dealers wary of inheriting repair liability offered thousands less than the same bikes would have fetched just months earlier. Private sellers fared little better. Word of the recall spread fast in online forums and rider communities, making potential buyers skittish. Even if a bike had been repaired, the stigma lingered. Some owners discovered they owed more on financing than their motorcycle's current market value. A bitter realization for those hoping to upgrade or downsize. A frustrated rider shared that after the recall, his dealer offered thousands less than he still owed on the loan. "I thought I was investing in something solid. Now I'm paying for a bike I can't even ride with confidence, and I feel trapped." The crash in resale prices was not just about economics, it was about pride. A Harley was supposed to be an investment in a lifestyle, a rolling piece of American steel that stood the test of time. Seeing that value evaporate so quickly left many questioning the stability of the brand itself. And in that questioning, another fracture appeared, one deeper than any financial chart could capture. Cult of Harley cracks. For decades, Harley-Davidson has been more than a manufacturer. It has been a cultural force. Owning one wasn't just about riding, it was about belonging to a tribe. From rally meetups to charity rides, from leather jackets adorned with club patches to the shared nod on the highway, the brand built an unspoken brotherhood. But a brotherhood is built on trust, and trust is fragile. The recalls, the delays, and the drops in value began eroding that sense of unshakable unity. Conversations at bike nights shifted from talk of chrome upgrades to shared frustration with corporate decisions. Some riders defended the brand fiercely, insisting that recalls were a sign Harley cared about safety. Others weren't convinced, arguing that the problem should have been caught before bikes ever left the factory. Social media amplified the divide, with videos of recall repairs and personal rants reaching tens of thousands of viewers in hours. The result was a cultural tension that Harley had rarely faced in its modern era. The risk of alienating not just customers, but the very community that defines its identity. And while riders debated loyalty and accountability, forces outside the community were preparing to escalate the fight in a way that could change the company's future entirely. Lawyers smell blood. When mechanical failures put lives at risk, the courtroom is never far behind. Within days of Harley-Davidson's recall announcements, personal injury law firms began running targeted ads aimed at affected owners. Television spots featured stern-faced attorneys promising to hold corporate giants accountable, while online banners appeared in rider forums and social media feeds. The legal pitch was simple. If you experienced a crash, injury, or even a close call tied to the defects, you might be entitled to significant compensation. Behind the scenes, class action specialists were already building cases that went beyond individual claims. They examined whether Harley had prior knowledge of the flaws, and if so, how long that information had been withheld. Discovery requests sought internal emails, engineering test reports, and quality control logs. The stakes were not just about payouts to injured riders, but about proving negligence, a finding that could open the door to punitive damages in the tens of millions. The company, for its part, moved quickly to assemble a legal defense team, retaining some of the most aggressive product liability firms in the country. But while Harley worked to contain courtroom exposure, another battle was already being fought on a very different front, one measured not in legal briefs, but in the daily movement of its market value. Stock slipping faster than tire. Harley-Davidson's share price had already been under pressure from shifting consumer taste and global economic uncertainty, but the recalls added a fresh layer of investor anxiety. In the week following the Street Glide announcements, trading volumes spiked as institutional investors trimmed positions and retail shareholders dumped stock. The numbers told the story. A drop of nearly 8% in just 5 trading sessions, wiping hundreds of millions from the company's market capitalization. Industry chatter painted a picture of rivals circling like hawks. Marketing teams in competing brands sensed an opening so rare it might only come once in a decade. Every new promotion, every ad. Market analysts framed the decline not as a temporary stumble, but as evidence of deeper operational vulnerabilities. On earnings calls, they grilled Harley executives about quality control protocols, recall cost estimates, and the potential for lasting brand erosion. One prominent brokerage downgraded the stock from buy to hold, citing heightened uncertainty in product reliability. Even more telling was the shift in long-term projections. Growth forecasts were quietly revised downward for the next 3 years. The sell-off might have stabilized in calmer times, but these were not calm times. While Harley's financial team tried to reassure investors, rivals were circling the wounded brand with a predatory precision that would soon make the market pain feel even sharper. Indian and Ducati Pounce. In business, moments of weakness rarely go unexploited. As Harley wrestled with recalls, legal threats, and investor doubt, its competitors moved with calculated speed. Indian Motorcycle, Harley's most direct domestic rival, rolled out an aggressive marketing push aimed squarely at disillusioned Harley owners. Limited-time trade-in bonuses offered thousands above market value for Harley bikes, recall or not, if the owner switched to an Indian Challenger or Roadmaster. The message was clear. We are the stable, reliable choice. Away from public statements, closed-door meetings stretched late into the night. Directors weighed the cost of silence against the risk of disclosure, each aware that one wrong move could trigger shareholder revolt. The mood was tense, measured, and haunted by the knowledge that every decision now carried historic consequences. Across the Atlantic, Ducati took a different tack. The Italian manufacturer leaned into performance and prestige, launching a series of targeted ads highlighting its rigorous quality assurance and track-tested engineering. Dealer events doubled as recruitment drives, inviting Harley riders to test ride multistradas and Diavels in an effort to woo them away from the cruiser market entirely. The combined effect was more than just a few lost sales, it was a crack in Harley's dominance of the heavyweight touring segment. For decades, the company had been able to weather competition with its cultural cachet. Now, with its brand under scrutiny and its customers frustrated, those cracks were widening. And inside Harley's headquarters, the pressure was building in ways that were no longer just external. Boardroom whispers. In the glass-walled conference rooms of Harley-Davidson's Milwaukee headquarters, the mood had shifted from defensive to wary. Senior executives were no longer just discussing recall logistics. They were quietly debating the future of leadership itself. With CEO Jochen Zeitz already slated to step down, the question was who could step in and stabilize the company's image, investor confidence, and operational integrity all at once. Some board members floated the idea of bringing in an outsider, a bold break from the tradition of elevating Harley lifers to the top job. Others argued that such a move would alienate the core workforce and signal panic to the market. Meanwhile, whispers circulated about whether early internal reports had flagged the defects months before the recalls were issued. If true, that timeline could have devastating consequences in court and in the court of public opinion. The debate was not just about who would lead next, but about how much of the internal story could remain shielded from shareholders, regulators, and the press. Some directors privately worried that replacing leadership mid-crisis could trigger a deeper market slide, signaling instability to suppliers and lenders. Yet others argued the opposite, that decisive change would reassure stakeholders and reset the brand's narrative. The divide was stark, and each passing week without resolution strained internal alliances further. Whatever decisions the board made in those closed-door sessions, they would reverberate far beyond corporate headquarters. Because while Harley's leadership weighed its options, the recall crisis was already rippling outward into the broader motorcycle world and the global economy. Harley's chokehold beyond bikes. For Harley-Davidson employees, the recall crisis was not just a product defect, it was a window into the company's operating culture. In union halls from Wisconsin to Pennsylvania, workers spoke about the mounting pressure to hit production targets even as quality control resources were quietly reduced. Several former line employees claimed that the emphasis on speed and efficiency often left little room for thorough testing. The recall seemed to confirm what they had been warning for years, a dangerous imbalance between output and oversight. Union leaders seized the moment, framing the crisis as proof that corporate priorities had drifted too far from worker input. Demands for more robust safety inspections, better training, and a seat at the decision-making table grew louder. Some plants even staged brief work stoppages, not as formal strikes but as symbolic protests against the perceived sidelining of shop floor voices. The company's influence extended far past showrooms. From branded apparel factories to licensed merchandise suppliers, every corner of Harley's empire felt the tremor. Workers described a sudden hush in meetings, as if speaking openly about the recall might jeopardize contracts, promotions, or the unspoken promise of Harley loyalty. These actions did not go unnoticed. In Washington, lawmakers tracking the story began asking pointed questions, not just about mechanical defects, but about the labor conditions that may have enabled them. And soon Harley's internal issues were about to become a matter of national political theater. Congress wants answers. By late summer, the recall crisis had moved from business headlines to the political arena. Congressional committees announced hearings on motorcycle safety standards, summoning Harley-Davidson executives to testify under oath. The optics were severe. Cameras rolling, politicians grandstanding, and a line of suits forced to answer whether corporate decisions had put lives at risk. Lawmakers from both parties seized on the recall as a symbol of corporate overreach and neglect. Some framed it as a consumer rights issue, others as a workplace safety concern. Either way, the Harley-Davidson name was suddenly a talking point on cable news, late-night shows, and campaign trails across America. Some members of Congress used the hearings to push for tighter federal oversight of motorcycle manufacturing, including mandatory third-party testing before models could hit the market. Others treated it as an opportunity to highlight broader concerns about declining American manufacturing standards. The recalls became a symbol for everything from outsourcing fears to the perceived erosion of Made in USA quality. Harley attempted damage control, emphasizing that the recalls were proactive measures and that rider safety remained paramount. But the sound bites that dominated evening news told a different story, one of a company on the defensive and a political class eager to show they were holding it accountable. As the spectacle played out in Washington, something quieter but equally consequential was happening at the grassroots level, where Harley's most loyal customers were starting to organize in ways the company had never seen before. Owners form recall groups. What began as informal online chatter soon evolved into structured grassroots activism. Harley owners across the United States formed recall-focused advocacy groups, pooling resources to share repair timelines, legal advice, and strategies for negotiating with dealerships. Facebook groups, once dedicated to ride photos and gear swaps, transformed into hubs for tracking which service centers had the fastest turnaround and which lawyers had filed the strongest claims. Some groups took it further, coordinating mass communications to state attorneys general and consumer protection agencies. Their goal was not just to pressure Harley into faster repairs, but to push for transparency on how widespread the defects truly were. Owners who had never considered themselves activists found themselves leading petitions, speaking to local media, and even consulting with class action firms. Some groups quickly grew from a handful of frustrated riders to hundreds within weeks, fueled by viral posts and live-streamed meetings. The energy shifted from isolated complaints to a coordinated push for answers. For many, this was no longer just about fixing a bike, it was about demanding corporate accountability. This level of organization created a new kind of pressure on Harley, one it could not simply address through marketing campaigns or service bulletins. The brand that once thrived on loyalty and lifestyle imagery was now contending with a customer base that was mobilized, informed, and unafraid to demand change. And as this bottom-up movement gathered force, industry watchers began to realize that the implications of the crisis reached far beyond one company's recall. If this opened your eyes, make sure you subscribe right now. You've just seen part of a story still unfolding, and you won't want to miss the next chapter. This isn't a recall, it's a wake-up call. The Harley-Davidson recall saga has already entered industry case studies as a turning point for motorcycle manufacturing. Analysts argue that it will reshape how companies approach quality assurance, customer relations, and crisis management for years to come. Competitors are re-evaluating their own production lines, not just to avoid Harley's fate, but to capitalize on shifting consumer trust. Some are introducing extended warranties, others are bringing more testing in-house, and a few are openly courting Harley owners with no questions asked trade-in policies. Analysts noted that Harley's stumble was a rare moment when a legacy brand's dominance looked genuinely vulnerable. Suppliers, insurers, and even overseas distributors began privately discussing contingency plans, fearing the fallout might ripple into markets far beyond heavyweight cruisers. The sense of uncertainty was no longer just theoretical, it was spreading. Regulators, emboldened by the congressional hearings, are signaling tighter scrutiny across the sector. New proposals include mandatory defect disclosure timelines and steeper penalties for delayed recalls. The industry's old model, where loyalty could cushion even major missteps, appears to be over. In its place is a landscape where customers expect transparency, rapid response, and accountability from day one. For Harley, the road ahead will require more than engineering fixes. It will demand a cultural shift in how it views both its workforce and its riders. And for the entire motorcycle industry, the message is clear. The days of assuming brand power alone can weather any storm are gone. The next storm could already be forming, quietly in the background, waiting for its moment. You've just seen how one bold move can send shockwaves through an entire industry, and this is only the beginning. The next announcements, the next counterattacks, could rewrite everything we know about motorcycles, jobs, and the future of riding. Don't just walk away and forget it. Stay in the loop. Hit subscribe right now so you're here when the next piece drops, because once it's public, the conversation moves fast. Share this video with the riders and friends who need to see it. This isn't just about bikes, it's about the choices we're all about to face. And if you want to know what could land you a fine just for customizing your ride, don't miss the next video. Riders are getting fined for this popular mod. Watch it now.